5 months ago, my fiance and I relocated to the Boston metro area from central Connecticut. I had been living roughly in the same area for about a decade, and I bought my first EV at this place, and I had chargers installed at the house, so I was able to level 2 charge there. But moving to an apartment complex, you're not always guaranteed to have level 2 charging. That was one of my biggest concerns with the move. Luckily for us, Boston is a pretty EV-friendly area, so finding a complex with EV charging was relatively easy. In today's video, I'm going to talk about how it's been living with level 2 charging at an apartment complex versus at my home. So if you're interested, stay tuned. Hey everyone, it's the Ioniq guy. If this is your first time to the channel, welcome. My name's Corbin. I cover all things Hyundai, Kia, Genesis, EV related. Most of you know that I own 2 EVs, an Ioniq 5 and an Ioniq 6. And when you own a home and you can do whatever you want and you have access to your electrical panel and everything, charging EVs really isn't that big of a deal. You get the charger installed and there it is. You're not competing with anybody for chargers. You can charge whenever you want. Now, when my fiance got her new gig here in the Boston area, I was very concerned about finding somewhere that had good, reliable level 2 charging. I was spoiled. I had my pick of multiple level 2 AC chargers at my house. I tested and reviewed a few. One of which I've been meaning to put the review out on is the N-Phase, which ties into my solar system, so I can charge my car with excess solar generation. So I do really miss having that as an option. I thought that was really cool. But we'll kind of start out from the beginning. So I started looking at apartments in this area, and I was torn between an apartment complex or a 2-family, 3-family building. So I started looking in all the normal places, Zillow, Realtor, Apartments.com, to try and find a place with level 2 charging. So after a few weeks of searching, one actually turned up. It was really at the top of our budget, and I spoke with the owner on the phone. It was a 3-family unit, so we would have had the entire first floor to ourselves, which would have been great. And on the phone, the owner said, "Oh yeah, we had a previous tenant who had an EV, so we installed an EV charger." And I was like, wow, that's awesome. I can just move right in and just start charging immediately. So I said, I'll come up and take a look at the apartment. Now, coming from central Connecticut, that's a 3-hour round trip drive, so a little bit of an inconvenience, but you got to do what you got to do. So I get to the house, and I'm like, oh, can I see the EV charger? So he took me to the garage. It was mounted on the front of it. And I'm like, where's the charger? So the previous tenant paid to have a NEMA, I think 1450 outlet, weatherproof outlet installed on the garage. Not a charger, just the outlet, which is fine because I have a bunch of level 2 chargers kicking around. So I could have brought one, just hung it on the wall, and it wouldn't have been a problem. But the kind of thing that irked me was the fact that the owner said that there was a level 2 charger on site. And he clearly doesn't drive an EV because he didn't know any better. So that's my first tip if you're looking for an apartment with an EV. Really question them about whether there is a charger or not, especially if you're moving from like across the country and then you show up and find out, oh, it's just an outlet and you don't have a level 2 charger with you. Now, in the end, that wasn't the reason why we ended up not going with that apartment. The timing just didn't work out right, so we ended up moving on. So we started looking more at apartment complexes after that. They're a little bit cheaper, have some nice amenities like gyms and underground parking garages and stuff. So that was our next search. So earlier in the year, when I came up here to look at places to live after my fiance had just found out she got a new job up here, I checked out a couple apartment complexes. One already had level 2 charge point chargers on site. So this complex had, I think, 5 or 6 level 2 chargers. And when I went to look at it, the first thing I said was, there's like 2 or 3 gas cars just parked in these spots. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, oh, great. So there's already tenants that live here that are like, oh, I don't really care about these EV charging spots. They're closer to my apartment. I'm just going to park in them. So I'm thinking, okay, great. They're always going to be half full because you have ignorant ICE drivers that like to use them. So then that same day, we went and looked at another apartment complex, and it did not have level 2 chargers, but I liked the complex more. It was more the feel that I was looking for. And I talked to the property manager and they said, yeah, we have permits in. We're in the process of getting EV charging stations installed on site. But they were like, it's not going to be until probably summer of 2025 before they're in the ground and operational. I said, okay, well, maybe I could make that work. There's an Electrify America station not too far from the apartment complex. I could go use that once a week living in the city, we're not going to be doing a ton of driving like we were back in Connecticut because there's so much mass transit here. So I thought that I could live with that, and it might make for some interesting content in the future, relying only on public DC fast chargers. So I kind of said, okay, we'll consider that place, but as of now, let's just think about the one that already has level 2 chargers. This is going to make our lives a lot easier. So a few months go by and we're starting to get ready to think about signing a lease somewhere. So I reach back out to both companies and I'm just kind of starting to get the ball rolling. And I just happened to say, hey, any updates on the level 2 chargers at your facility? And they said, oh yeah, they're already in the ground. And I was like, they're already in the ground? You guys said it was going to be almost another year. So what they installed here at our complex is 5 charge point posts, each one having 2 cables on it, so 10 chargers in total, right across from the leasing office, close to the gym, close to the package room. So convenient enough that you can do a couple things and kill 2 birds with 1 stone if you are charging your car. And it's only a 2-minute walk from our apartment to the charger, so not a big deal at all. And they're super reliable, super easy to use. You just walk up. You can use an Apple Watch, your iPhone, whatever. As long as you have the charge point card in your Apple Wallet, you can just double tap the power button, hold it up to the post, it uses NFC, and it unlocks the cord. Plug in and you're on your way. So using them has been really easy. The problem I have with them is they are super duper slow. In the ChargePoint app, they show as 6.6 kilowatts, but in reality, what you're actually getting at the car is 5.9 kilowatts. And then after losses, it's a little bit even less. It's more like 5.5, 5.6 or so. So like when I go back to Connecticut and come back here, when I leave here with a full battery, I'm usually coming back close to 0, at least in the wintertime. It takes a long time to charge. It takes 11, 12 hours. And this week I've been spending a little bit more time revisiting the Kia EV9. So this time I have the Land trim instead of the GT line. And I just went and plugged it in and it has a big battery. You're talking 95 kilowatts usable. So at 5.6 kilowatts, let's just do some math here. If you show up with a dead battery, that's a 17-hour charging session from 0 to 100. So if you get in late at night, do not expect to get a full battery by morning. Now, I understand why they did this. They were probably power limited based on what they had access to, so they gave as much as they could. Personally, I would have preferred that they had a couple less stations and could output a little bit more power, but that's the decision that they made. I'm also not thrilled with the pricing structure here. So every time you plug in, it's a $2 flat fee. So if you only want to add 10%, $2 fee plus whatever energy you're adding, which is 30 cents per kilowatt hour, which is honestly a pretty fair price for a public charger. But the fact that there's a $2 flat fee, I think that's really lame. On top of that fee, there is also an idle fee, which is $2 per hour after it senses your car is no longer charging. This for me is really annoying because sometimes I will plug in and I have to time it that I'm either going to unplug before I go to bed or unplug first thing in the morning. And I just wish that wasn't there. As somebody who lives in this complex, I have never seen it even close to remotely full. The most I've ever seen is, I think, 3 or 4 cars charging at once. So you still have 6 or 7 chargers available. In my complex, there's at least 1 or 2 other Ioniq 5 owners, an Ioniq 6 owner. I've seen a Lucid charging. What else? ID4. There's a ton of Teslas here. So being in Boston is pretty cool because I get to see a lot of EVs all the time. At any rate. So I also pay for a garage spot here in our building. It's underground parking, so the car is parked almost directly underneath our apartment, which is pretty convenient and it keeps the car relatively warm and just clear of snow, frost, whatever. What I really wish we had in the garage was just a wall of 110 volt outlets, because honestly, that's all I really need. I also did just get an e-bike, which is a Velotric Discover 2. I'm going to do a review on that in the near future. And it would be nice if I could just plug that in the garage versus having to take the battery out and bring it up into the building. I also might just use the vehicle to load adapter on the car and just plug it in that way. But then you've got the V2L adapter hanging off the side of the car, and if somebody's trying to squeeze in the spot next to me, they might knock into it, might break it or something. So it's really a risk I don't want to take. But other than those few gripes, charging at an apartment complex has really been a lot better than I expected it to be. I'm sure there's apartment complexes in the country that probably installed them 5, 6, 7 years ago, and they're just in rough shape. They're probably unreliable. So I know my experience might be a little bit skewed because I have the newest hardware at our complex. So I feel for you people that have landlords that just don't give a shit and are willing to just let things just fall apart and not take care of. But our complex here seems really good about maintaining things. But circling back to the kind of 2-family, 3-family, smaller apartment building type of situation, one of the things that came up was the fact that that place we were looking at, the owner said that the previous tenant paid to have that outlet installed. So the owner of the property wasn't willing to do it, which in my opinion is just really small-minded. It is a huge selling point, especially here in Boston. There's going to be a lot of people in the future that won't even consider an apartment building that doesn't have chargers. But he was an older gentleman. I don't know what his politics were or what his thoughts were on EVs, so I didn't really push him on the matter too much. But the other day, Tom Malogany from State of Charge on YouTube here, he put out a video with a really cool product that is going to really change the game for these small apartment complexes. It's basically a meter extension for where the power comes into a building, and you basically pull out the meter, put this device in between, and it just adds a hole for a piece of conduit to come out of, and you can just have an EV charger right next to the meter socket. So that is really cool. Really low installation costs, assuming that you can put the charger right next to the meter and assuming that it's accessible to your car. They cost, I think they said like $600 or $700 each. So still fairly pricey, especially when you factor on another $300, $400, $500 for the charger itself. So a little over $1,000, but it's a pretty easy installation. In some states where they don't require the electric utility to be present to pull the meter, the installation can be really quick, really painless. You don't have to schedule anything with the local utility, so that's nice. But it is really cool to see that there are companies out there developing cool products to try and make EV charging as accessible as possible. And in my opinion, building codes for new construction should be altered that every new building has to have EV charging installed. And I hope there's some regulation in the future that says existing apartment owners have to install chargers if a tenant requires it. Because I don't think these landlords understand that when they deny somebody getting a level 2 charger on site, this just means that they're getting pushed out to DC fast chargers, clogging those up. If they can't charge at work, they have no other option. And that's another thing. Level 2 chargers at places of business where people go to work and are parked for 8, 9 hours, 10 hours a day. These places also need to really do more to have level 2 chargers. When I was working at a bigger company, I reached out to the facilities manager a few times. It was just like, when are we going to get more EV charging here on site? Because they had EV chargers, they only had them over at the executives building for all the people who were driving their Tesla Model S's to work every day. All of us peons over in engineering, we didn't get any charging. And they just said, yeah, we're not going to do that anytime soon. And the company just loves to spurt out all their greenwashing about how clean they are and what they're doing. But that's another topic for another video. So anyway, that's an update on what it's been like living with level 2 charging here. Like I said, pretty good experience all around. So if you're an EV owner in an apartment complex, a condo complex, a multifamily, leave a story down below with what it's been like for you. How has the situation evolved over the years if you've been driving for a while? So anyway, guys, if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. Check out my store, ioniqguy.com, for cool accessories for your Ioniq 5 or any EV from Hyundai, Kia, or Genesis. Consider becoming a channel member for as little as 99 cents per month. For $2.99 per month, you can gain early access to all of my videos before anyone else sees them. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.